Hey guys, this is Tom Paul Tipton, your host for the Exchange Podcast. We're coming to you from Living Water Church in Conway, Arkansas. I'd like to welcome you back to another episode and say thank you to those who support this podcast with your contributions. Please like and share us on Facebook and get the word out, and like, subscribe, and share us on YouTube. Send any questions you have and join in on the exchange.
To ensure the security and continuing stability, the Republic will be reorganized into the First Galactic Empire.
Oh, welcome to the podcast. Sorry, we were just reviewing the president's speech from last Thursday night. It was quite entertaining, interjecting, and I do want to say that they did not hire out our lighting guys to do their lights. That red was just that was on them.
Yeah, stick to your own colors, man.
I mean, nothing Joseph Stalin about that color at all, and just the two Marines standing there and
who always look good, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Who always look good.
I'm not sure about red. I mean, I was kind of thinking Crimson Guard there for a minute, but.
Do you think somebody just said, we're going to be really patriotic and just do red?
I don't know. I mean, it was, it definitely made a bold statement, red. I mean, it was very, I don't know, Red Moon Rising, Hunt for Red October. That's kind of what came to my mind. And, I mean, half the country was threatened. 71 million people.
Well, Harry, the other thing, when you listen to it, he's like, well, not all Republicans are like this. No, listen, dude.
It's the Republican establishment, the reason that got Donald Trump elected. They're the ones who aren't like that.
Oh, yeah, no, we don't want to be like the establishment. And when you have people calling out Mitch McConnell, which is great, and you have people like Huckabee and all them being just like, we don't really want these people because they're kind of been part of this establishment that's been around for so long. That's speaking volumes, and I think that's great. And they're backed into a corner. And listen, you can say people read into it all you want, but red is a color that gets your attention. Mm-hmm. It's very exotic.
Yeah.
It's very violent in its nature.
Yeah.
It's the same color as our blood. I mean, there's a reason when you look at the American flag, they say the symbolism of the red stripe is for the blood of those who have died before to keep this country.
Well, you're right.
It is.
You're right. And Mike Tyson actually talked about this one time on a podcast or radio station, and they were asking about fighting out of the red corner, fighting out of the blue corner, and the reason that they chose the colors the way they did is because Ronald Reagan was the last American president to, when he ran, both times, there wasn't red and blue. It was all blue. Mm. And so the Democrats started referring to the Republican Party as the Red Party, and the reason for that was it was a psychological thing because communism was always red. Nazism was always red.
Yeah.
And so, when he's using this picture last night, I'm going, okay, well, I mean, there's a good point. I mean, this could be the red wave. I mean, there's so much red that it's made its way to Liberty Hall. And, but we're hearing a lot about Civil War right now. And,
I think Tim Pool made a drinking game out of it now.
Well, yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, people that, I remember years ago when people would mention anything about a civil war, you'd think, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
We already fought that. But what's going on is we're so divided in this country that our government actually resembles the division in this country. And we're having an issue just getting along, because we're not voting on issues anymore. And when he gets up there and he starts saying that 71 76 million people are a threat.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. And here's the thing. The president does not have to have congressional I have to go back and look at this, but I'm almost certain. He does not have to have congressional approval to call in drone strikes on anything that is deemed a national terrorist threat. That was one of the things that people tried to get Donald Trump to declare the cartels, because you can use military power to a certain point, and he's already said twice you can't fight the nation. The other day he said unless you've got F-15s, and then when he was campaigning, he even made mention about that the government has the power of the nuclear weapons. Okay, well, I don't believe that, because all someone needs to do is go ask BLM and Antifa about that.
Yeah, actually,
because they were pretty successful without any of that.
Well, and the thing is, we're painting broad strokes of terrorism over, well, allegedly broad strokes of terrorism towards one group when we had the Summer of Love,
yeah.
And we're not doing it. I actually just looked it up. It's from the Department of Justice. From September 25th, 2001, the president has broad constitutional power to take military action in response to a terrorist attack on the United States.
Mm-hmm. That's it right there. And so I'm not sure. Okay. And I've mentioned this on this podcast before. A few years ago, I went through a divorce, and the president, anybody at that level, whether you're, I was actually listening to Dave Mustaine the other day on Joe Rogan, and he was talking about how that when you're younger, you find out. He said it really stings when you find out that you've said something that had you not said, things would have went better. And he said you have all these handlers around you. And the president, congressmen, senators, they all have handlers around them, saying, hey, don't say that. I mean, Ronald Reagan, when he made the Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall speech, the State Department kept taking that out. And finally, he just said, look, leave it in there. And they didn't want him to say it. And they thought it would cause World War III, but he went ahead and left it in there. And that's one of the most iconic, Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall.
Yeah.
And, so, I remember going through, the reason I mentioned my divorce is because I had, if you want to call them handlers, like 4 or 5 people.
Yeah, you seek counsel in different
and
ways.
What they would do is they would say, look, before you put anything on social media, send us a text first. And they would come back and say, yeah, that's fine, post it. Or, hey, change this word, change that word, change the sentence. And there was a couple times they'd be like, look, you know what, let me just rewrite this for you. And it worked, because when you are high emotion, you're in high emotion, you'll say things that you go, man, I wish I hadn't said that.
Yeah.
So he has handlers around him. And so my question is he so weak mentally? Does he really have dementia or some cognitive disability that he is just reading what is being written? Because I do believe, whether it's him or not, there are people around him that do want to take away the liberties of this country and the citizens. And what they're doing is they're it all goes back to the Saul Alinsky, keep prodding and prodding and prodding and keep pushing your opponent until they react violently. And then when they react, you step back and, I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, you think about it, and it's one of those things where, and I'm going to call them sane people, because sane people don't want blood. Sane people don't want fighting.
No.
When people look at this video and they see pictures, when I saw the picture of Biden, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this, a picture of him with the red behind him, and he's got his fists clenched, and it looks like he's yelling. The optics there are so terrifying that I sit there and I look at it and I go, there's no way anybody with a sane brain looks at this and says, oh, this is great. This is a good look for us.
Yeah.
Because Obama, Trump, Bush, you name it, they all had their faults, but decently made sure red, white, and blue were all in their optics. I mean, this is because when you have handlers like for Joe Biden, they're the ones who are getting the lighting and the sound and everything that you're going to see on TV. They're going to make it look a certain way for you so that it invokes a certain emotion from you. Because here's a good point. Facts don't care about your feelings, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but here's the reality of human beings. Feelings don't care about facts. If there is a beloved dog of yours that is in a burning building and the fire department and the police are like, hey, everybody stay back, this house is on fire, but you just got home and you know your dog's inside because you keep him inside and you love your dog. You hear so many stories of people running full speed into that building and coming out with their dog. Why'd you do it? Well, he's part of the family. Mm-hmm. My emotions are high. So what all this is an optics game to get you to think about your emotions and really dig down deep and say, yeah, those guys are bad. Those guys are terrible. You know, it's strange.
Well, it is. And I want to read a scripture here. And we as Christians specifically are going to have to understand that there's a way that we approach this. We are not reactionary. We respond. And in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12, it says, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against authorities, against cosmic powers over this present darkness, against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God. Now, Governor DeSantis in Florida quoted that scripture about a year or two ago, and he said that, you know, it was time we take up on the whole armor of God. Now, we're not here to wage war against, and certainly not encourage war. I pray I've said it here, I'll say it again. We're in a cold civil war, and I pray every day it never gets above that, because the moment that bullets start flying, everyone suffers. And you know, it's a very serious situation. And, you know, there's things that I do that, you know, I take a little bit light, when I look at that speech, and, you know, it's scary because Jacques Pierre, I mean, this is what makes it scary. Jacques Pierre has said on a few occasions that America, that the MAGA crowd, or MAGA as they like to call it, is the most existential threat to American democracy. And I would agree that it's a threat to democracy, because we are a republic, just as we played, you know, before you. I mean, they want to take the republic and make this a galactic empire. But I'm going to give props where props are due. And, you know, the president on Thursday night, he said it clear. I'm glad everybody was there to hear it. Just go ahead and play that clip.
An America with an unlimited future. An America that's about to take off. I hope you see it as well. Just look around. I believe we could lift America from the depths of COVID. So we passed the largest economic recovery package since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And today, America's economy is fast.
That's as clear as I've ever heard it said. And I'm glad he said it. I mean, what's your take on that?
I think I'm having a stroke. I'm sorry, but look, come on, like, people. It's one thing when people have gaffes, and a lot of people, you know, I don't like it when people are having debates and somebody has like a brain fart, you know?
Yeah.
And a brain fart's noticeable because people snap their fingers, they go,
And we all have them.
Everybody has them.
Yeah.
But guys,
Yeah.
It's been happening every speech now. You know, that's a drinking game now.
Yeah.
You know, when I was in college, there were drinking games. Don't condone it. Don't think people should do it. But when they have drinking games, what they're saying is that because people, and I know I don't have to really explain this, but I'm explaining it so I can give context.
Yeah.
When a drinking game is made, it's because a particular thing happens on like a song or a movie or you name it. Mm-hmm. And it's because the people who are playing, they just want an excuse to drink.
Yeah.
And so with Trump, back in the 2016 election, my friends and I made a drinking game. If there was a speech and he said, lock her up, take a drink. If he was making fun of another Republican, take a drink. There are, you know, when
media.
Yeah, exactly. When Biden makes a gaffe, or when Biden says that MAGAs or whatever, or he has, you know, a slip up of the tongue, not because of a brain fart, but because he wholeheartedly, when you hear that clip that we just played, he wholeheartedly is just, this is the word, and I know it is, and look, maybe his brain thinks he's saying a certain word, but what comes out is just so.
I don't know if he knows it all what he's saying.
It's hard.
I think he just reads it off that teleprompter.
It's hard to say, and a lot of people would say, "Oh, well, what about all the other old presidents that we've had?" Listen, some of those older presidents have said, like, I know for a fact that there's a clip of Reagan where he goes, I'm getting old. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
You know, he even, at least he's able to be self-aware, and he says, all right, listen, I'm getting old and, you know, on the decline, so maybe I should step down. And he does, you know, eventually. But what I'm saying is Biden doesn't seem like he's trying to slow down.
No. I think it wouldn't shock me if he doesn't try to go for a second term and they don't try to run him again. But the thing that's concerning, this is what concerns me. They continue to use that MAGA is the most existential threat and that it is a terrorist organization. Okay, what exactly do you think happens when you're consistently telling your supporters that the other side is a terrorist threat? Eventually, somebody will act out violently against what they think is trying to take away their freedoms, because that's what we're always hearing. We're trying to take away liberties. You're trying Roe v. Wade, but Roe v. Wade isn't taking away anyone's liberties. That's going to be thrown back to the states, which is where it should have always been.
And look, there's a number of states who have said, nope, you're not having an abortion. Yeah. Okay. And then there are some states who said, look, we're protecting this because we see it as a right in the state. Okay.
And it throws it back to companies like Amazon who have said, we'll pay for you to go have an abortion.
Because they don't
anywhere you want to go. Because
maternity leave is expensive.
No, maternity leave is expensive, and they're paying like $4,000 for every abortion. Now that sounds like a lot, but it's not when you consider the maternity leave.
Yeah,
and so it's like no one's taking away your liberty. Amazon, they're not going to be the only company. They're just the company leader. Other companies will do the same thing.
Yeah, and
they're go have the abortion or take the maternity leave.
Well,
it don't matter.
I did read from Tim Pool, and I mentioned Tim Pool, timcast.com. They have, I say they're in the middle in terms of they're just getting a whole bunch of different places. I recommend that you guys do your research on your own time.
Absolutely.
I use Timcast. I check up on CNN and Fox, but I try not to stick with only the establishment news organizations because you can tell there's a huge bias there.
Yeah.
But from Timcast, there's an article about the federal government saying that they will allow people to get an abortion. And I want to talk about this real quick. When the federal government says that if you are a part of the federal government, for instance, let's say you're a soldier, you're on a base and you get pregnant and you don't want the child. Mm-hmm. Well, the federal government says, yeah, you can do that, but in Texas, it's against the law to have an abortion.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen if you're stationed in Texas and you're on a base and you get an abortion, but in the state of Texas, there's going to be head bumping there. It's going to be, hey, you're not allowed to do this on our state land, And right. That's what I'm saying is that people with all the rhetoric of they don't want you to have an abortion, they hate you, they hate gays, they hate blacks, they hate this and that. And then when a certain state like Texas or Arkansas or whatever one has abolished abortion, you're going to have some times where the federal government is going against the state's rights.
Well, and that's just it. The question that I would tell our listeners to ask anybody who wants to talk about this, say, okay, well, let me ask you this then. Who's actually usurping their authority over liberty? The conservative who just says, hey, we want to throw it back to states?
Yeah. Or
the left who says, hey, we're going to make this federal law and you have to provide abortion in your state because it's women's rights. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, but yet, time out. Your rights do not supersede my liberty. So, because red states are not telling companies like Amazon, you cannot pay for a woman to go have an abortion. They're not doing that. They're saying, look, if the company wants to do that, that's the company's prerogative. We, the state, are not going to provide it.
Yeah.
So the next question I would then ask is say, okay, if you think that the majority of the country is on your side, because what the left always likes to say is, well, there's more registered Democrats than there are Republicans. Okay, if you really believe that that the majority is on your side, there's one way to handle this and one way only, and that is, short of war, that is we have convention of the states.
Yep.
And we have a constitutional convention. And if you can get the Second Amendment done away with, if you can make abortion a law, if you can make gay marriage actually constitutional instead of the way you try to define that, then you know what? I'll go along with that because I'm all about the Constitution, which is contrary to what he said Thursday night in his speech. He said that the MAGA Republicans are against the Constitution. No. I voted for Trump both times, and will again if he runs in 2024. But I can promise you this: if we have a constitutional convention or a convention of the states, and you can get all of that by vote, because the majority of people want it, and the majority of states want it, I'll abide by it.
Yeah.
But if not, then quit trying to come into a state where I live and pay my taxes and tell me how to live. So don't talk to me about I want to take away your liberties when that's what you're doing.
I see when you ask the question of where is your freedom? Where is it being protected by? That's what you want. People are saying, oh, it's my right. Okay, well, where is that right coming from? Mm-hmm. And look at the process. If people would just ask those questions, then they could get the answers because the answers are there. Hey, there's a convention of states. Hey, there's a process for it. Uh-huh. But I truly believe that people my age and younger, our patience is worn super thin because we never built it up growing up. A lot of people I know growing up were used to, oh, I want this. And then maybe in a day they got it.
Sure.
You know.
Well, and again, I'm going to throw this back too, because there are people who tell you, and I know I sound like a hound on this, but it's out there. They're trying to say that prolonging self-gratification is white privilege. And again, they're making it a racial issue.
I mean, that's the people who also say being on time is white supremacy.
That's what I'm trying to say. They're making everything a right.
So many abstract things that are white supremacy. It's so wild to me because I've had more often than not on my dad's side, who's black, more often than not, I've had his side of the family get on to people because they're late.
Yeah.
I've had my mom's side of the family who's white. And again, of course, this is anecdotal, but I mean, guys, you can't just paint a broad brush like everybody else that somebody's racist or whatever, because on my mom's side of the family, they'll say, and she's white, they'll say, hey, be here by 5 for dinner, and I can show up at like 5:30, and they say, hey, it's fine. We haven't really gotten it ready. You know, it's ready, but we were just kind of waiting on you. Yeah. We're fine with it, you know, and it's like, where's the racism?
Well, here's the thing, okay? It's not the majority of the black community that is saying it's kind of like I was in Branson for a family reunion, and there was a what was that? I can't remember it was a tribe. It was an Indian tribe, and they were having a powwow in that state.
Nice.
And they wanted to be called Indians.
Oh, cool.
And what you find is it's not the majority of them that want to be called natives, because one of them made the statement, you know, to the effect of, where would John Wayne have been if he hadn't fought the Indians? He didn't fight natives. He didn't fight indigenous people. He fought Indians.
Fought the Indians.
Yeah, that's right. And it's like there was a certain striking of fear with that name Indian.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Doesn't? Yeah, I mean, you didn't say, "Hey, don't go over there because the natives are over there."
Yeah,
or, don't go over there because hey, the Indians are over there and they want to scalp you. There was a certain amount of respect and reverence for that, because it was like that, you know. And it's not the people, like they're putting this big push on, you know, they want the Kansas City Chiefs to have to lose their name. They've already got rid of the Washington Redskins, and it's not even the natives wanting that. Again, it's the white people who really do feel superior and know more than everyone else.
The wine moms.
Yeah, it's like
they do nothing for most of their day, and they need something to complain about. And shout out to Trinity Radio. I'll have to send you a link to them. It's a Christian podcast. Our good friend Zach Seiler, it's his dad's podcast, and my YouTube, you know, YouTube being creepy, you know, talking about Trinity Radio with Zach. And it popped up in my recommended. So I said, oh, cool. So I checked it out, turned it on, and shout out to Trinity Radio because they were talking about all these crazy things that are going on. And he had a really good, and I'll leave a link of it in the description below for anybody who wants to watch it, but he was really hitting the nail on the head with the hammer of truth. That is, a lot of people just don't have a purposeful life.
Right.
Meaning, some people think you could just tell a kid you could be whatever you want when you grow up. He made the point of saying, I don't tell my kids that, because pragmatically, they can't just be whatever they want to be when they grow up.
Right.
But if I can teach them, just like we should be teaching each other, to be proud of who you are to God, then it doesn't matter what you do in your life. You're going to stay on the straight and narrow. You're going to find a purposeful life in His will, because the reality is that we all, human beings, have a drive to be, I'm going to say it, and it's not going to be nice, everybody wants to be a slave to something.
Yeah.
Whether it's, and you're either a slave to sin or you're a slave to God. That's what we believers believe. But, Trinity Radio really did a good service of saying, look, we can't keep telling ourselves the lie that we could just be whatever we want.
No, you've got to work at, if you want to do something in life, you have the opportunity to try and go do that. Again, it's not just handed to you. It's like with this podcast. We come in here every week as informed as we possibly can, because if we say something that is wrong, the information is lacking, people don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
And granted, we've always got friends and family who support us in what we want and what we do. But when you want to broaden your base, you have to do something that makes people go, hey, I want to listen to that.
Yeah.
And so it's, this is an industry that everybody go grab them. And it really started to take off during, COVID. People started buying all this. I looked at the stock for like mics and computers and stuff, and Amazon just sold through the roof with all this stuff because people were starting podcasts.
Just having conversation.
Yeah. And some of them, I think some of them might still be around, but a lot of them fizzled out after about 10 or 12 episodes. But persistence, that's another thing. You have to be persistent.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned earlier about people wanting instant, something to happen instantly. Well, that doesn't happen.
No.
That does not happen. You have to work. You have to hone your skill. You have to make yourself better. An expertise at something, that will make you a success far quicker than having a degree in something.
That's very true. Yeah. I was talking with my brother, I want to say last week, and we were just discussing, he said, do you want to do anything with your degrees? Because I have 2 degrees. I have a bachelor's and a master's. Mm-hmm. And I said, I think having it is nice, especially for the podcast, because I was telling him I'm really gonna hammer down on this podcast thing. Yeah. I'm really gonna do my best. I'm gonna network. I'm gonna talk to people. I'm gonna try to get to the colleges in our neighborhood to just try to figure out how I can reach other people and talk to them. I think me having degrees, and maybe some of you listened and heard me say that I have a master's degree. You'd be surprised at how many people still respect it. Mm-hmm. It's not a matter of because the thing is, the corporations may not respect that piece of paper, but I'm 27 years old with a master's degree, and I still get double takes. Like, you're how old? You have, I guess you do know what you're talking about. And there are certain subjects I know what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to claim I'm an expert in everything. Right. But here's the thing: my time in the university, even though the money part of the university is a scam, I've learned a whole lot from the professors who knew a lot more than me, and I learned how to say this is key. And I wish people don't have to wait until they're in college to learn this, but learning how to say 3 words that are very important to the growth of yourself, and I think to the growth of other people. Mm-hmm. Because as a young man, you don't want to be the person who says, I don't know, but learning how to say I don't know is important for any young man, any old man. Yeah. If you can say, I don't know, that gives you grace that is not talked about to go, but let me go research it.
Sure.
Because if you know how to say, I don't know, People aren't going to hold anything against
Right.
you. They can't.
Right.
Oh, well, he doesn't know. You're right. I'm ignorant to this subject. Let me
Yeah.
go learn about it.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that people, I don't remember any classes when I was in college that taught how to interview well. And that's one of the problems that many people have. They do not know how to interview well. And in today's society, you don't have to take a college class on it. You can go on YouTube and people will tell you how to interview. They'll show you how to interview.
Yeah.
It's like testing. Testing is something that some people can't do well.
That's me.
Well, because here's part of the problem. Many people want to go in and they want to cram for a test. There's some things you can't cram for, like math.
Oh, yeah.
Cannot cram for math.
You either know it or you don't.
That's right. And the way you do it is consistency. And like we're just talking about here, there's some things you have to be consistent with. If you're trying to develop a skill as an architect or anything, you have to consistently study that, and you have to stay up to date with the changing, how that field changes, regardless of what the field is. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts and talk show radio hosts, not because I'm so much trying to listen to today's news, but I'm trying to figure out what is their product and how do we figure out, how do we brand this, right? What can we offer that other podcasts are not offering?
Yeah.
And that's a hard task to undertake because there's so much stuff out there. Yeah. But you have to go, what can I say that people are needing to hear? I'm not interested in what people are wanting to hear, but people are needing to hear that's not being said. And in my opinion, one of the things that we're lacking is how to address the day's culture through a biblical worldview. And there's a lot of them out there doing it.
Yeah, well, I mentioned Trinity Radio earlier. Yeah. They're doing a good job at that. I think they're through a university up north. I'm planning on just having a conversation with them and just kind of picking their brain,
Sure.
Sure. That's the other thing is just when you delete the opportunity to have conversation, you can't get better. You can't.
No.
Because if I'm a Raiders fan, my dad's a Raiders fan, my brothers are Raiders fans, we're Dodgers fans, we're Lakers fans. If I only hung out with them, then all I know is Dodgers, Raiders, and Lakers. And then when I hear somebody else, because this is the easiest way to tell how bad disconnect is. Because when you go to the East Coast and you talk to somebody and you say, hey, who is your favorite team? They go, the Pats. Well, that's jarring.
Yeah.
Because the Patriots aren't the Raiders. So right off the bat, you are you're indifferent to this person because they're a Patriots fan. And again, this is hyperbolic. I'm not making it to be like you would fight a Patriots fan. You might, but
I just think there were more Tom Brady fans than there were Patriots.
That's very true. But you get what I'm saying. You're already indifferent with this person. So if you live in an echo chamber, because that's what I wanted to get to. If you live in an echo chamber, well, all you're hearing is this is racist, this is this, Marxism works, socialism works. Or if you're in an echo chamber where you hear Trump is awesome, Daddy Trump, I love, Republicans, I love guns, all this. If you live in that world and you only hear that and then you hear somebody else, it's going to be jarring right off the bat. That's why you have to get past that jarring feeling of, oh, they're different to me.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to talk to them. And here's where the product comes in for us. And this is for anybody who's listening. This is for any future listeners out there. The product I want to offer with our biblical worldview is to have an exchange.
Yeah, that's
Roll
right.
the credits. That's what it is.
It's an interesting name.
And so when we have an exchange of ideas, then we also have an empathy towards one another.
That's right.
Okay, look, you explained to me how you feel about that. I may disagree, but now I know you a little bit more. And I won't be, because sometimes when something's jarring, your first instinct is to be defensive and you become rude. And that's just, for me, perfectly honest, I try to be as nice as I can to people, and I hope a lot of people do. But by what I'm saying by that, being nice, is I try to really, really understand where people are coming from.
Yeah.
I draw the line when somebody starts talking about something that involves the harming of children in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
That I will never sit well with you. But if you're sitting here telling me, I think we should have bread lines, I think we should have a one world economy, I may not like that.
I'm not interested.
I'm not interested. But please tell me what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in that idea, but please tell me why you're interested in it so we can have a conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Why are you interested in potential suffering of people? Because these are
because we have evidence.
Yeah, and I think you talk about things that are jarring, and we're entering the political. Well, we've been in the political season, but we're entering now about a little over 2 months from the midterms. And one of the things that many of your trumpeteers get jarred over is when they say, well, the election, they voted Trump out. No, they didn't vote Trump out. The election was stolen. I have never really subscribed to the election was stolen because I think that there was some things that went on, and I do think that there were some things that was underhanded. But I think that happens in a lot of elections. But one of the things that Trump voters are going to have to start doing is they're going to have to start looking at going, hey, why is it unpatriotic to question an election? Because that was one of the things that he really touted Thursday night. But it's like, man, there hasn't been a Democrat presidential candidate since Michael Dukakis in 1988 to concede an election. Not one. They have all contested the outcome of an election. And Bush was selected, not elected. And then John Kerry did the same thing. He contested it. Hillary Clinton has still never conceded. The Democrats have never conceded. And you know what? I don't care because a concession is not law. It's not constitutional.
Yeah. It's just more of like a formal thing.
It's a common courtesy that's extended. Hey, your guy won. We lost.
Congrats.
Boom. Yeah. Michael Dukakis is the last Democrat to do that. But yet, when Trump and his supporters just say, hey, I think there was a lot that went on election night of 2020 and it needs to be investigated. Oh, that's unpatriotic and they're insurrectionists. And they want to point to a couple thousand people and less than that went into the Capitol, less than 100 people went into the Capitol, and then less than a half a dozen went actually into the chambers. Mm-hmm. And they want to point to that and say, well, that was an insurrection. Well, like you mentioned, the Summer of Love. Well, what about that? Because everything that people saw over that summer was burned, loot, steal, killed. I mean, everything, and you'll get your way.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm trying to say. They keep saying these phrases, right? And so it's like you continue to call MAGA supporters terrorists and existential threats. It's not going to be long until one of your sides who, and I hate that term, but unfortunately that's where we are in this country right now, till somebody on the left who is off their rocker decides to take authority into their own hands. And God have mercy, what happens then?
Look, nobody can deny what had happened on Thursday, which was the president calling MAGA Republicans a threat to this country. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know anything about saying words like that, but well,
it was Obama who said words mean something.
They do. And so when you're calling something a threat or a problem, mm-hmm. what do we do about threats? Yep. What do we do about problems? Yep. Because here's the thing. If I'm walking with my wife downtown Little Rock, I don't know why we would be, but it's the middle of the night, and there's a guy with a machete or whatever, and he's walking towards us, and he's a threat. Eventually, I or someone else is going to have to deal with that, mm-hmm. because if he's a threat, or she, because women can be bad too. If they're a threat, you got to deal with it.
Right.
So when you just throw out, some people, and I'm sure there are people out there that say, "Oh, I don't get it. What's the problem?" Well, I'll tell you the problem. Soon it'll be MAGA Republicans. Then the next thing it'll be BLM. Then the next time it'll be Antifa. Because people who want that absolute power cannot have anybody who is disrupting the status quo. If they can use you to disrupt things for their favor, they will. And Antifa and BLM, I'm telling you, they played you like a fiddle.
Well, again, it all comes from the Saul Alinsky handbook, Rules for Radicals. And here's here's what I've said, and we look at certain things. Go back to I think it was Night of the Long Knives. The SA had been used just like BLM and Antifa had been, and then when it was time for the Nazis to establish power and authority, the SS went in and just completely killed all of the SA. Because, as Marx put it, they are useful idiots.
Yep.
They're just pawns. That's all they are. And so what happens, they're playing each other. And so, there's nothing saying that you can't get a conservative or a Republican. I wouldn't say a conservative, but a Republican who would get in and start using divisive language against that of even Antifa and BLM.
Yep.
And then there's violence even carried out on that side. Why? Because, as you said, when you start saying things, the Bible says, by your words you're justified and by your words you're condemned. Mm-hmm. And it says that God sent his word and healed our disease. It says that the word became flesh. We as humans have that same ability with our words.
Yeah.
When we say something, it's either healing or it's divisive. Mm-hmm. And when we have politicians and we have elites saying certain things, if we're taking a steady diet of that in over the word of God, that starts to germinate within our spirits.
Yep.
And then we start to get angry. And that's why that I started this podcast off with Ephesians 6:12, because we have to realize that, hey, we're not wrestling against flesh and blood. And we have to understand that because a person has a different political idea, even if it's far left or far right, keep them to the margins and realize that I don't subscribe to either, but what I do subscribe to is the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And I'm a Christian first and foremost, so my go-to on everything is the Word of God.
Yep.
That is my go-to on everything.
I agree. We have been going a little bit at this, but go back and watch that speech. Go back and watch that speech and comment down below. Figure out what it is that you think he was really trying to say when he's talking about MAGA Republicans. Form your own opinion on this, because this is just what me and Thomas have seen. Okay, we want to have this conversation in the comment section on our Facebook. And just to give you guys a little bit, we are also...
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
We are also going to be doing something new. I'll let Thomas go into that, but we're praying that we can start something totally different here, and we're super excited. We got some new equipment. We've got some more subscribers. Guys, we're really just... I am super excited. We have 29
our
subscribers.
Are growing every week. I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's growing every week.
Yeah, it's great. I'm having a good time. To those who are listening and those who have been around, thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm going to hand it over to Thomas. So, Thomas, why don't you let us know what we're doing?
So, where we're headed with this, we are working out a deal with iHeartRadio. When I say a deal, we're looking into getting on that platform. We've not talked to anyone there. We don't have contracts in front of us, but we are looking to get on that platform and to grow our social media platform. So I would say this: be praying with us about that, because ultimately we started this, and this is still our drive, to be an outreach for Living Water Conway Church in Little Rock. And however we can do that, that's what we want to go for. And we've started a young adults department here called Live, and that's something too that if you're in the area and you're under you're 18 to 30, come check us out.
Yeah.
And but check us out. Like I said, we're getting ready to launch hopefully this week, a couple of weeks, on iHeartRadio, but we're staying here on YouTube and Facebook. Like, share, and subscribe. Tell all your friends about us. And like I said, we're just grateful because we are growing subscriptions every week, and that's a good thing. So.
Yeah, steady, slow and steady wins the race. And it's like Thomas said, we got to be consistent with these things. But today has been a great exchange. I'm looking forward to seeing your guys' comments, and I'm always happy to be here with Thomas. You guys stay safe. God bless, and we love you.